Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Every once in a while, we have to bring out the big dog.
Yeah.
Oh, God help us. It's time for Danny Unleashed. Sponsored by Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. Go to eastonroofing.com for more.
That's right. Little Danny Unleashed. It is the program here on Sports Radio 810 WHB as we are broadcasting live from the University of Kansas Health System Training Complex. Of course, Danny, brought to you by our friends at Easton Roofing. Did you know that you might need some more insulation or maybe better attic ventilation if you've got things like cold upstairs? Ice dams forming in your gutters, lots of icicles hanging from your gutters. Could be a problem. Insulation in the attic is something that Easton Roofing does, and they'll be happy to take care of it for you. Repairs, yes, they do that as well. Commercial and residential roofing, that's Easton Roofing. Find them online at eastonroofing.com or call 913-257-5426. Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. Danny, how are you, sir?
Doing just fine, Soren. You know, you live in the city of champions. I guess all boats are lifted by emotions and happiness. And, you know, just too bad that it is conspired that it's going to be a crummy day tomorrow weather-wise. But I think sometimes fans revel in the fact that they are making a sacrifice for their team. I do think it will probably hurt the turnout some. People who are into it but not dedicated diehards might have gone out if it was a nice day, might tend to stay home, but I still think it'll be a monstrous celebration, and I just feel great for the city and for all those fans who've put so much time and effort and money into following the Chiefs, and it's a great time to be a Kansas Cityan.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. Well put. I like to kind of just start off with a wide range. Well, first time I talked to somebody since the game, and then we'll scale it down. We'll zoom in from that. But just what was your overall takeaway from this team, this season, that game? Was there one thing that you'll take away in watching and evaluating football moving forward, from this season or that game?
Well, I think the Chiefs are in some ways a glorious anomaly from the standpoint of the fact that they made the phrase playing 60 minutes of football an absolute lie in the playoffs. I mean, any coach is going to try to trot that out to some youngster anymore is going to be, well, look at the Chiefs. They played, maybe half the games of good football, and they're the world champions. And for a good 40 minutes, and you could argue 50, they were not the better team on Sunday, and it didn't matter because they can put so much excellence and make it pay in such a short period of time that it renders the rest of the game being played well by the opposition useless. So it's another reason why people should be really excited about the future of the Chiefs, because they didn't even come close to playing their best football in the playoffs, and they won the Super Bowl. So I think that's what I'll take away in part, and certainly from Sunday's game against an excellent team.
I think I take away the same thing. I would probably couch it differently from the standpoint, I get the 60 minutes. I think they would say the Chiefs are the perfect example of playing 60 minutes because it was 51
that you
60.
have to play 60 minutes, right?
Right. What I take away is championship teams do not have to play perfect. We've spent our entire careers in Kansas City, the portions of our careers, which I think for both of us is most of it. It's almost all of mine, except for a few years.
Yep, most of mine.
Work in Vegas, most of yours. And during that entire time, we've been covering football teams that we knew every time they entered a postseason, if they could even get to a postseason, had to play perfect football. And we've devised these are the things that have to happen for the perfect game. And in reality, I back up to what we said in this show a lot last week, at least what I said. I said to everybody who would listen, I said it on every radio interview I did. In a playoff game, because both teams are good, you don't have one turd and one good team. In a playoff game, you can pretty much look at whoever's got the better quarterback, and they're going to win. And if they don't, they might be surrounded by terrible talent, or they may have just had a bad day, or the other team did play perfect. But what I do know is I don't think you can play perfect for 3 straight games against playoff caliber opponents. And that's what the 49ers were somewhat charged with. That's what you have to do when Jimmy Garoppolo is your quarterback. I mean, I think this is just the education of us as fans and media of what it looks like when you're really actually a championship caliber team. You can't have Lamar Jackson throwing just a handful of pass patterns and say we're a complete team. I know we threw for 36 touchdowns. 23 of them, I think, were inside the 10, which is in and of itself its own remarkable thing. He does have a gun. He can thread the needle. But it also means that for the most part, they got to grind their way down there with the run, and then they'll play action you. They'll show the run, and then they'll throw it. Somebody finally stopped their run, and they couldn't win. Somebody made them play from behind. They couldn't win. Right? The 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo, same thing. Kyle Shanahan's got his whole play card, which is when there's the whole first half or most of the second half, or he's not trailing, Jimmy Garoppolo can carry out what is a brilliantly designed game plan. I've talked to too many people to think that Kyle Shanahan isn't what they say he is. Everybody says he's an incredible, play designer. I mean, he really is Andy Reid Jr., okay? He's that guy. But you know what? He's got Jimmy Garoppolo. And what we saw at the end of the game was, okay, here it is. It's on the quarterbacks. Each of them had to take a turn to win the game when the other team knew they had to throw the ball. And Garoppolo sucked. He sucked.
I do agree with that, but I will add this caveat. Jimmy Garoppolo would not be getting this criticism right now, and he would be world champion, and he would have been saying the words, "I'm going to Disney World," if not for some really outstanding defensive plays by the Chiefs, in particular Chris Jones. I mean, the 2nd and 5 play that Chris Jones batted the ball down, I would have run there. That's the one argument I have with Shanahan. His play-action passing had been working, blah, blah, blah. But that play call had 2 receivers who were open. And Chris Jones made an excellent play. If he doesn't bat that ball down, it's a completion to George Kittle, and the Niners may be Super Bowl champions right now. So I think that I'm going to give the Chiefs some real credit in that fourth quarter, too. But, yes, Garoppolo missed some people. He did. I think he missed a second read. I think he showed himself to be, and that's why he's so good in play action. He can execute fine when the first read is there. And maybe if he's got great protection, he can get it to the second read. But generally, he does his damage with play action, step back, set like Tom Brady, fire, completion. And when he has to get away from that, you're right. He would, but a couple or 3 of the most important plays of the game were excellent defensive plays by the Chiefs that may well have been game sealers for the 49ers, if not for fine individual play by the Chiefs defense.
No, and I agree, and we all agree that you got to be good on both sides of the ball. You can't suck on defense, and the Chiefs became very good on the defensive side of the ball. I wouldn't argue that point, but I think this is like,
in the grand scheme of things, I totally agree with you. In the big picture aspect, it's so much harder. It's why when Carl Peterson used to say, all you have to do is get in the tournament, it was baloney, and we knew it.
Yes.
It was his way of trying to say, he was trying to sort of say the same thing that Billy Beane says about baseball, that the playoffs are a crapshoot, whatever. And maybe in baseball it's a little more like that. I don't know. I don't tend to agree because you play multiple games and so on and so forth. But his Chiefs teams were not good enough. There was a better team laying out there. There might have been 2 better teams. And for you to beat 2 or 3 better teams than you, that was proven during a 16-game season, it's not just getting in the tournament. I mean, you might be able to spring one, but as you say, you're not going to be able to do it 3 times, even if you've gotten yourself a bye, and 4 if you didn't. And I heard Carl the other day, and Boy, he sounds like a changed man in his older years. But anyway, he was totally wrong about that.
Well, the man lives on a cruise ship.
That sounds pretty good, although, I mean, it sounds pretty good for him. I've never been on a cruise, and I don't have any desire to go on one.
Well, it's not. It's
kind of nice.
It's not just your little portal, I'm sure. He was explaining it. He lives in Kansas City, I think he said, about 3 or 4 months a year. And then the rest of the time, he owns, for lack of a better term, a condo on what is a floating condo.
That I would probably do. The reason I don't want to go on a cruise ship is because there's hundreds of other people there, too.
Yeah, so. This is – I can't remember how many units he said were on there, but my memory is like 165 on a big boat, and it's just constantly sailing around the world, and you get on or off whenever you want.
Oh, so this is like townhomes with multiple people on them.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. No, but what I'm saying is no one – like you don't check in and check out. It's yours.
Right.
And so, yes, there are, but there's only, my understanding was it's a great big old cruise ship.
Right.
Like you see that it would have 3,000 people on it, and it has 165 units.
Well, that sounds pretty nice.
Yeah. I was like, okay. I said, well, where's the boat now? Lebo and I were talking to him. Where's the boat now? He said it's in Sri Lanka.
Oh, okay. So you have to, sometimes you have to go somewhere to pick it up. To get
when you get off, if like he decides, okay, hey, we're going to get off for a month or two or whatever, then when you want to get on, you got to go to wherever the boat is.
Right.
It's one boat, and they own their condo, for lack of a better term. Because I want to be clear, it ain't a little fold-down bed out of the wall with a
no.
TV portal making it look like you can see outside when reality you're 30 meters below water. I think this is fairly big time. But
so he's the Dave Kingman of general managers.
What is
Dave Kingman lived on a boat when he played for the Giants.
Did he really? Yeah,
in San Francisco. Yeah.
No, but I do feel validated in what I've said that Andy Reid, with Mahomes, is going to win multiple titles. That Andy Reid has really done nothing wrong other than not have the great quarterback. I think Brett Veach, who was just in here, gave Andy Reid, talk about being able to feel good. I'm sure Brett Veach feels like he has everything in his professional life he owes to Andy Reid for taking him on as a coaching intern and then sending him on a path to where he would ultimately be the general manager. But Brett Veach, the stories are told, and I have no reason to believe they're not true, basically spent 2 years vetting Patrick Mahomes.
Andy Reid said it the other day. Did you hear it? Andy Reid?
Yeah, I know he has. There's no one who says anything differently. I'm just saying, I don't know if you got Chris Ballard and John Dorsey, would they be like, screw that, I was the guy that said, here's the guy. You go down there and make sure he does. I don't know what they would say.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I never had heard anybody say it in as strong as terms as Andy Reid said.
Right.
That he'd walk into the office, slap him down, and say, this is the greatest football player ever. And come on now.
Yeah.
And so, but he did say it in no uncertain terms. But you're right. But this tale from two other people who were involved in that process
might be different.
May be different. Because he's the only one left around.
But you know what? Hey, the history's written by the victors. So he won. So we'll write Andy Reid's version of the history. And to that I say, how satisfying to know that you gave the guy that you feel so strongly about, and who in your mind, and I think in all accounts, gave you so much, that you can give him the real piece that he needed to go be everything he can be as a coach. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that are pretty cool right now for the Chiefs, but I guess my overarching reaction is that the Chiefs, and it made it all the more fun in the end, because there were, if you're really a fan, somebody who gets nervous and all that stuff, you spent at least 50% of the playoff games in horror at what was occurring. 24-0 down. I know it changed
was one quarter
rather quickly. Yeah, that was so that was bad. That's a quarter. And then the game the other day started. Yeah, the game the other day started off okay, and then the last 7 minutes. So I think that was 3 quarters of not misery, because in the second quarter you're still tied, but third quarter.
No, they were leading in the second quarter, and then the Niners
third quarter disaster has struck, and then you're down in the second quarter. So maybe not quite 50%, but a lot of it, you're like, what is going on? We're going to lose. And then you win. There's no better feeling. And I wrote a blog yesterday about it, and I was like, there are thousands of people, I don't think I wrote it exactly this way, but there are thousands of Kansas Cityans walking around today acting like they had faith, and they're full of it. They are liars because who didn't think they were pretty much doomed on the second interception? I didn't think they were dead because it still was just 10 points, but you knew that you were 2 or 3 first downs away from dead, from totally dead. And to the defense's credit, and maybe to Jimmy Garoppolo's discredit, they didn't get it done, and the Chiefs are champions going away on top of everything else. So, I mean, just a delirious way to win. I mean, if the Chiefs had gone out and solidly won all the 3 games, won the 2 games as big favorites the way they were supposed to, they ended up covering. But, I mean, the way they were supposed to if you're a big favorite. And then the Super Bowl was a dogfight, but you're generally in it, and it was tight, and the other team didn't have control, and you won. I don't think the feeling would still be superb, but the path is so much more fun. We looked like we were going to lose, and we won. We looked like we were going to lose, and we were going to. It looked like for sure we were going to lose, and we won. I mean, how good is that?
But the reality is, at the end of the day, the games are scored with points,
right,
and not by time leading, right? At the end of the day, they won by an average of 14 points per game.
Right, and that just shows how good, the course, the way they got there made it really enjoyable. It's always more fun to suffer as a fan. I remember when I was talking about when the Astros won the World Series, and you can save your cheating jokes and whatever, but everybody said, they went ahead 5-0, and it was, I'm like, it was torture. That was torture then for me because, first of all, they kept walking the ballpark and hitting batters and stuff like that. But the other part was, all you can do now is screw this up. I've got to spend the next 2.5 hours praying that they don't blow this game. And, that's so when you're a fan, the journey is always a very, very interesting one, but the way the Chiefs played these games out just made it all the more satisfying, I think.
I couldn't agree more. Let's take a break. We'll talk more about the Super Bowl and the Chiefs and where they're going. Danny Klinkskill is with us. Danny, unleashed by our friends at Easton Roofing, commercial and residential roofing jobs. Project manager on site at every job. Happy to do repairs. 4 straight years voted best of houses. Angie's a Super Service Award winner. Yep, they can check that box as well. Check out their Google reviews online. They are exceptional. Call 913-257-5426 or find them online at eastonroofing.com.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you worked for other companies in the construction industry. What inspired you to start your own company in Easton Roofing?
Well, Danny, when you are working for somebody else, you oftentimes don't get to see the project through from beginning to end, and you don't get the final control over the customer experience. And I wanted to build a place where people can come and get work done on their house and not have to worry about being treated the wrong way and get a good customer service experience start to finish.
The company slogan is "Where Integrity Matters." Why is that so particularly important to you?
Well, for us, what that means is treating each other with respect at work, treating our clients with respect, and making the right choice, especially when no one's looking. So when you're presented all the time as a contractor with choices that have to be made, are you going to make more money on this if you cut a corner? And we just wanted to make a place and a slogan that said to our people and to whoever is our customer, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the right choice regardless of profit.
Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
All right, the good sense end of the hour answer. How many quarterbacks have won a Super Bowl before turning 25?
Ooh. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes.
How many did you say?
I asked how many.
Let's say 2.
Oh, I think Ben Roethlisberger was less than 25.
Oh, that's probably right. Yeah, good call.
That's 3. Back
Montana,
in the day,
maybe?
was there anybody? I don't think Montana.
Nope.
Is 3 correct?
3 is correct.
There we go.
And you named the 3.
Very impressive. Playing for Good Sense, GoodSenseSubs.com. You can put your order in right now, pick it up on the way home. I got a sick kid. That may very well be how I get my dinner. Go to GoodSenseSubs.com. You can save your orders. So I got all the kids on there. Save it by name. You just click it. Boom, it's in there. Don't have to plug in the whole sandwich and all the toppings. It is very easy. And, of course, the app works the exact same way. And, of course, 10% back when you're part of the loyalty club. Slicing the meats and cheeses fresh each day, baking the bread fresh twice each day. It is Good Sense Subs. It is a great option for you on your way home. Don't forget, you can pick it up or they will deliver it for you as well. Danny Cleanscale's with us. Brought to you by our friend Joe Spiker and his great Easton Roofing, online at eastonroofing.com. So where do they go from here, Danny?
Well, I did say on a podcast the other day when I was with Stan Weber that I wanted to call a 30-day moratorium on dynasty talk so people could enjoy the championship that they just won. But it's hard to imagine, if you are asked the question, that they're not going to be an outstanding team for quite a long time, at least in the near term, barring the hideous bad injury to Patrick Mahomes. So they should be in the mix for quite a while. Does that guarantee you anything? I mean, you can go to the playoffs every year and not necessarily get it done and then turn it into some kind of another misery story. Chiefs have made the playoffs 7 straight years now without reaching the Super Bowl again, but I don't see that either. So if you want to be a prognosticator, you'd have to say that the odds are pretty good that in the next 6 years they would at least make 3 Super Bowls, 2, 3. I mean, they should be getting a bye. They should be at home.
Right.
They should be at home. So
So
the path is there. And then what we just talked about, they've shown that they don't even, they can have a bad day for a long time and still win the game. I mean, Patrick Mahomes just wasn't very good. That was as bad as we've seen him play. That was the thing that was talked about. It was the most different thing about the Super Bowl, period, was the fact that one of the things that was talked about over and over again is that, where was the bad game from Mahomes? And that was the 4th lowest quarterback rating of his career. But then in looking up those games, from start to 50 minutes, or, from 8 to 50 minutes, you didn't remember him missing throws like that, looking confused, doing things so that can happen, and they still beat the 49ers and won the Super Bowl.
So I'm fine with saying that's his worst game, because I think it was. But I also think, if you're going to say, okay, so what does that mean here moving forward? So how do I project how he's going to play? Like if you're a gambler, okay, am I going to bet on this team, or is that a sign the guy's getting worse? No, it's a sign that the 49er defense is pretty good. Excuse me, I almost choked myself to death with my own saliva. Occupational hazard there, Danny.
It's all right, Soren. I can sit here and talk for a couple of seconds if you'd like.
No, I'm getting it together. Please spare me. But my point is this. A couple of things. I had a couple of thoughts there. One, I think the 49ers are good and some credit needs to be given. I do think that's one of the things of usually being the guy analyzing and rooting for the team that lost the game that we saw on Sunday. I don't like how the end, the game ends and everything that the winning team did, was right, and everything that the losing team did was wrong. I'm not saying you're saying that, but other people do. I think Kyle Shanahan had a good game.
I did too. I think he had a fine game.
Yeah, because I think Garoppolo sucks, and I think time will prove that. Do you agree?
I don't think he sucks, but I don't think he's even as good as maybe some are giving him credit for. He delivers a nice ball when things are right. I think he seems to absorb information pretty well. I don't think he thinks on the fly that great during games. So he's probably a little better than sucks, but a little worse than maybe some people are saying.
Yeah, I'm probably overstating it to make a point. I'll say this. I think he'll make a few more big-time throws than Alex Smith, but he'll make a lot more mistakes. And I think I'd rather have Alex Smith than Jimmy Garoppolo, having watched him play. So let's that's the ballpark I'll put him in, where, if you want to do your tiers, he's in the Alex Smith tier of where he is. And, I think that two things come to mind. One, in some ways I feel like, fine, don't miss Emmanuel Sanders, because there'd have been 1:27 left on the clock, and Patrick Mahomes will go down the field and get a touchdown. Now, the things that make me say, this game was so close. Well, what if they don't call the push off on Kittle? Well, there's 6 seconds and he lines up for a field goal. They still won by 11. Even given the Emmanuel Sanders touchdown, I still think the Chiefs go down and get just as many points, and they still win the Super Bowl by 1 point if you give them both those plays. So from that standpoint, I think, this was a much more dominant performance than they're given credit for, because I don't know that it matters whether it all came within 10 minutes. If they had an explosive, when they had an explosive second quarter against the Raiders and they blew them up and had the big lead the whole second half, it's viewed as a better game. But in reality, their one-on-one matchup wins, their play-by-play wins, all came in the second quarter when they beat the Raiders and had those 28 points in that quarter. That was really where they won the game. They did enough the rest of the time, and they ended up winning by double digits. That's what this game was. It just happened to be at the end, which scares the crap out of you. Like you said, great way to win a game, right? Mm-hmm. It scares the crap out of you. But then let's turn it around from the flip side. And this is my point about moving forward. They're going to be better than anybody they line up against with the quarterback, because they'll get him signed. But you mentioned how important Chris Jones' stops were. He's not going to be back. They have $18 million worth of cap room and a laundry list of guys who aren't signed, including Fuller, Breeland. Both of those guys were big in this game. Chris Jones is on that list. Wiley, Wisniewski, so your left guard is not in the fold right now on that list. Demarcus Robinson is not back for whatever role he is, the fourth wide receiver. But you're looking for that guy. Suggs is gone. Agba's gone. So there's your depth on the defensive line. Pennell's a free agent. There's the guy who came in and really solidified and stopped the run game. Chris Jones, as we mentioned, is not there. Both backup tight ends are free agents. Morris Claiborne, the whatever he is, the fifth defensive back, is not signed. They've got a lot of guys. And if you take Bashaud Breeland and Chris Jones out of that game, how different does it look?
Well, they might lose.
Right.
I think that Chris Jones, the thing that was great about the Chiefs is that they had a couple of three defensive players who really hadn't done much all day, who at the most important part of the game showed up big. Frank Clark, I think, had 3 quarterback pressures. They all came in the last 10 minutes. And Chris Jones got those big plays on the deflections. He wasn't deflecting balls early in the game. Before that play, that 2nd and 5 play, Jimmy Garoppolo was 12 out of 14 for 9 first downs on play action. Great timing for him. And Chris Jones, he makes 2 or 3 of the biggest plays of the game. He blew up the man across from him on the stunt that allowed Frank Clark to get the big sack on 4th and 10. So, yeah, you can make the argument that they don't win the game if Chris Jones isn't out there.
So I don't think Chris Jones is going to be back. Do you?
I'm never going to say never, because teams, he just made such an impact. Sometimes teams are willing to make maybe even decisions that might in the long term not be in their best interests because they just won and they don't want to lose the player. If you are looking at it from a sensible standpoint where you're trying to create a roster that can, across the board, once again win a Super Bowl, then you probably wouldn't because you're starting to tick off too many gigantic contracts, and then you're going to have to, have 35 guys who are hardly making anything. So I won't say I probably think there's a little better chance than you, but it would make sense for them to just walk away.
I think just when you consider that, you're going to slap some kind of signing bonus, it's going to take some kind of signing bonus on Mahomes, right? He's going to go north of $110 million guaranteed. He's going to go north of the $35 million per year that Russell Wilson's going to get, because you can't even just look at Goff and Wentz, because they didn't win Super Bowls, right? Wentz was on a Super Bowl winner, but he wasn't the guy that ultimately won it. So he's going to get more than the $110 million guaranteed that Goff got. He's going to get more than the $35 million per year that Russell Wilson got. And the signing bonus, I think, on Goff was $25 million that he got right there. You're going to get more than that, and whatever you get in the signing bonus is going to be prorated out on top of the salaries. And he's due to count 5 this year. So if you gave him a $30 million signing bonus, that's going to be $6 million per year that prorates out over. So he's going to count 11. So there's $6 million for the quarterback. Just just for getting the deal done. The big salaries won't kick in until later, but just for getting the deal done, there's $6 million that's going to come in, that it goes up. And then all the guys we talked about, I just don't see how you can make it fit. I think Chris Jones' fate was sealed when he didn't sign an extension last year. And so that, to me, looms large because he is a really good player. But that's the reality. Like, you win the Super Bowl when your team is way better than its cap value.
Right, and I also think we hear a lot of people say that Patrick Mahomes covers up a lot of warts, and that is true. But we have proof positive evidence that a person regarded as the best quarterback in the game cannot make Super Bowls year after year if he's not surrounded by at least enough in Aaron Rodgers. Now, I'm sure there's people out there saying right now that Patrick Mahomes is better than Aaron Rodgers, and he will be, greater than his career eventually. Fine, but Aaron Rodgers was routinely thought to be the best quarterback, or the most talented quarterback anyway, in the NFL for a long time, and some people will blame Mike McCarthy, whatever, but he's made one Super Bowl. That's your warning sign. That's your,
right.
That's your look at the reality that can happen no matter how rosy it looks at right now.
Let's take a break. We'll talk some more about where the Chiefs are going. Danny Clinkscale is with us. You're in the program. It is Danny Unleashed, brought to you by our friends at Easton Roofing.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
We're here with Joe Spiker of Easton Roofing. And Joe, oftentimes people will wait to replace their roof until there is a weather event. What should they know about that?
Well, Danny, the important thing to remember is if you're going to turn in a claim to your insurance company, you want to make sure that you actually have damage on your home. If you turn in a claim to your insurance company and they send an insurance adjuster out, it's going to be a claim whether they give you $1 or $10,000. So it's important to make sure that you actually have damage on your home before you turn that claim in. And all you have to do is give us a call. We'll come out, take a look, and make sure there's real damage, and we'll tell you if there's not. Maybe it's just a small repair and it's not worth a claim. So it's always smart to get somebody you trust to make sure there's damage before you turn in a claim.
Quality advice and guidance from Easton Roofing, where integrity matters.
Danny Clinkscale, Danny Unleashed, brought to you by Easton Roofing, as we are broadcasting live today out of the University of Kansas Health System Training Complex. Had on Andy Reid, Chiefs head coach, and Brett Veach, the general manager, looking ahead to the future. We're talking Chiefs football right now with Danny. Easton Roofing, commercial and residential roofing. The time to call them is right now, 913-257-5426. If you got any problems with your roof, repairs, well, other roofing companies don't really want to mess with repairs. Easton Roofing is happy to repair your roof. Call them, Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. 913-257-5426. See them online at eastonroofing.com. Danny, the end of the first half, clock management. Andy Reid now gets it. I don't know if you know this. He's figured it all out, and Kyle Shanahan has no idea what he's doing when it comes to managing the clock. That's the new narrative.
Well, and it's a silly narrative, especially because in the scenario I'm going to talk about right here, Andy Reid actually screwed something up. I didn't have any issue at all. I think a lot of the criticism of Kyle Shanahan is totally revisionist. It's just Monday morning quarterbacking, something you didn't say at the time. And what I said at the time was that I thought what they were doing was fine. I might have adjusted a little bit. I certainly think there was no way they should have been calling timeout with 1:30 to go right after they made the third down stop. Okay, that would have been brain dead. So John Lynch is brain dead because he was signaling for a timeout right then. Might have done it after first down, maybe, because they got a decent run. But I didn't have any issue with it. They were going to have the ball to start the second half, and then they got bailed out because Andy Reid called a timeout, which, to me was – he probably felt – and it was a reasonable fee. He's like, well, these guys are just milking the clock. So, so they're not going to run a passing play. Forget it. We're just going to stop the run, and it'll be fine. Well, in the end, he saved them time. Could have cost them 3 points by calling the timeout for the opposition. And that's another reason why I think the criticism of Shanahan, and I think you touched on this in sort of an offhanded way a little bit earlier in the day today. They weren't being that conservative because they threw a deep pass to Kittle, and it worked. And I'll reference Stan Weber again, and I think this so too, as he agreed that while under the current system, that was clearly what we call offensive pass interference now, the Chiefs should be very glad in this instance, and they may have won the game anyway, that we're playing in 2020 or the 2019 season, because I don't think there's any way that call's ever made.
Well, it wasn't made
in football before this year.
Well, it wasn't made on Kyle Rudolph, the Vikings win over the Saints. That had everybody upset. I agree with you. I would have been fine if it hadn't been called. And I also think the Chiefs would have been fine. I think the Niners would have led 13-10. And who knows? Maybe that brings the sense of urgency to the Chiefs, and they unleash the fury that much quicker. The Niners were getting the ball. Or
maybe really the game flow would have been affected for the 49ers. You can't really say. I mean,
right.
Then, 2 more scores, and so I think the way the game ended, and it, with a no by the way touchdown that the 49ers were just kind of let down and let in, makes it seem a little bit different. It was really a 24-20 game. And so I think you have to view it that way when you're viewing the strategies and what went on and how the points are distributed and things like that. I think if the 49ers really had a chance when it was 24-20 and the Chiefs got the ball back, that they wouldn't have just given up a 42-yard touchdown.
Well, when you're trying to stop a guy from getting a first down, oftentimes you give up the big run. So
right.
I'll give credit to the Chiefs for making him pay with the touchdown. But had they stopped him, do you think the Niners were going anywhere?
I didn't think they could get a touchdown. I'll say that. That's why the way the score played out as well, no missed extra point, whatever, that you had the 4-point lead when you scored that last touchdown was so big. Because to me, the Chiefs had either figured out something as far as their pressure was concerned. They were getting a lot of heat on Garoppolo. He wasn't handling it well. To me, the odds.
Let's talk about that for a second. I think what had happened was they were absolutely terrified, and rightfully so, of the Niner run game. That Kyle Shanahan coordinates a great run game, and their first look, I think the Kansas City Chiefs said, we are not losing to the Niners run game. If Jimmy Garoppolo can beat us, congratulations.
Right, and I think that's another reason that Shanahan deserves credit, because
I do too.
Because he said they're just going to gang up, and we're not. Sometimes you just have to say we can't run. I think everybody's saying, well, it's 2nd and 5. This is the time you impose your will. Well, 5 offensive linemen. I'm sorry, I don't care how much they're imposing their will. It's hard for 5 guys to block 8.
Yes.
So in the end, there are a lot of things that he did right, and I think people are criticizing him, and you often talk about this just because they lost.
Right.
I mean, the Chiefs did a lot of things right in the last part of the game.
Yes.
A lot of things right, and it wasn't just Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes made, in my mind, one real outstanding throw even during the good portion of the game, and that was the one to Tyreek Hill, because he backed up a little extra to get away from the rush. He had to throw the ball 55 yards in the air while really kind of backing up. And besides that, it was a total team effort. He didn't do anything spectacular besides that.
The Sammy Watkins throw.
It was a nice throw. It was better. It was a better play design.
Okay, it still has to be executed, and I think
certainly he executed. I'm just saying there were no. Think about this in that game. How many games have we seen Patrick Mahomes play where there wasn't a Canton moment, a moment that's going to be shown on his highlight reel when he's inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame? I don't think he really had one that's going to make that list, because he's got so many great ones.
That's fine. I'll give credit to the Niners on that because he time and time again evaded the rush, even to throw it away.
Yeah.
Which is part of his maturation, that he didn't try to force it, right? He had 2 picks, both of them on throws that weren't on target. One was awful, right? The worst pick he's thrown in his career. And the other one was behind the receiver and got tipped up, and that's a ball that could go either way. If it gets tipped down, it's nothing. It gets tipped up, it's a pick. The 49% of interceptable balls get intercepted. So, maybe he had kind of an unlucky day, although the one he threw was just
Although he got lucky on the fumbles, so.
Yes, absolutely. From that standpoint, yes. But again, I go back to the Niners pass rush. They're really good at that.
Yes.
And when he evaded and got out there and just threw it away a couple of times, I give him credit for that. Like, you're right. It's not going to make the SportsCenter top 10, but those were all athletic plays that Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't make. Jimmy Garoppolo
totally
finally faced the rush.
I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes had nothing to do with the rally.
No, I know.
I'm saying it was a complete effort in that last 10 minutes.
Yes, absolutely. I'm on the same page. I agree with you. I think your assessment's spot on. I'm just trying to point out to other people, Garoppolo could have taken off running to the outside to throw the ball away, and he couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks to why you go get Mahomes. And when Sammy Watkins is open, now the Garoppolo throw is going to be a little bit different, but it was a straight-on throw to Sanders.
Oh, yeah.
And he overthrew him.
Yeah, by forever, at a point in the game where you could afford to underthrow that ball and have it intercepted, really.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was just it was really a terrible throw.
It was a terrible throw. I think this offseason is going to be a ton of fun. I think they're going to be really busy. I think Brett Veach pretty much said that they've got a lot to do because of all these contracts that are up and some of the renegotiations that they're going to have to do.
It's going to be a lot of fun, too, because you just got a championship in your back pocket.
Yeah, exactly. You're playing with house money right now. Danny, great stuff as always, buddy. I appreciate it. Check out DannyCleanscale.com for your blog. I read it. It's very good, by the way.
Thank you.
And, of course, thanks to our friends over at Easton Roofing for sponsoring DannyCleanscale.com and Danny Unleashed right here with us. We do it every Tuesday here in the program.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.